So I help CEOs gain clarity over their ER projects. I don't have a fixed method as each situation is different. I have named my method Diamond Method to signify clarity, but how do I convey that this is what will help them? My competition is consultants from bigger companies like KPMG, et cetera. These companies have a higher clout. So one thing, Ubadullah, that I want you personally to get out of your head is you have to stop saying to yourself, they've got more clout, they've got more credibility, they've got more exposure, they are bigger. You got to stop saying that. That is going to hold you back. That is a self-limiting constraint that you are putting on your thinking. Like they have more clout, they have more credibility, they have more prestige. They may, but that's not going to stop you from using your unique mechanism to differentiate yourself at all. So let me address this because this is a great question. So, right. So Ubadullah is saying, right, that he helps CEOs to gain clarity over their ERP projects. And he said, I don't have a fixed method as each situation is different. So check this out. You see, here is what I want you guys and gals to understand, and please listen to me, okay, with this. That see how it looks like there isn't a fixed method, but there is a fixed method because there is a process for identifying which approach is appropriate for which CEO. So if I said, well, what is your process for identifying which approach is the right approach for each CEO? There is an approach in that. There is a method. There is a science. Right? We're not just winging it. We're not rolling dice and saying, all right, we're going to choose B for you, or the next one, all right, we're going to choose A for you. There is a process. So even when you say, like, I have a variety of different methods that I can use to help a CEO get clarity over their ERP projects, right? But it's different for every CEO. Well, then how do you know which one's appropriate? What do you do? What do you ask them? What do you look at? What are you looking for? What does it tell you, right? How are you able to know which is the right approach for each CEO? In that is the method. You see, that is the method, right? So just because you've got a different approach, just like, look, in when talking about the agency, talking about going back to, let's say, Alvaro and Diego for a second, in an agency, and for anybody else that runs an agency, in most agency work, there is always customization. There is always, right, we're going to do different things. Like, so I might, do X for one client, but do Y for another client. Okay, well, how do you decide whether to do X or Y? See, because the decision-making process, the decision-making framework in and of itself is highly valuable. Because, right, without that, right, if somebody wasn't able to make the right decision for what to do X or to do Y, well, then it increases their chances of making the wrong decision, of not experiencing the success. And so part of your process, part of, let's say, their process that they can share to somebody is like, we use an analysis, we use a protocol, we use a process to assess your, CPA to AOV ratio. We call that process, the golden ratio assessment. And based on that assessment, we're able to see whether you should do X or Y. Now, the beauty with that is that when you don't have that assessment, you're kind of operating in the dark. But with that assessment, you're never wasting money on ads. You're never You always know exactly what to do. You shortcut the process. You're able to. So you see how that even when you offer a customized solution, that the process of identifying what that custom path should be is the process, is part of the process. So even in that circumstance, you have a mechanism there. You just have to unpack it more. The way to really think about one of the best things that you can do, one of the best exercises for you to do in line with what it is that I'm about to teach you right now in this interrogation process, is looking at your mechanism as if you were either going to try to train somebody else to do it. So if you're a consultant, if you're a coach, right? If you're an advisor, whatever, and or like, what would you do if you were going to try to turn what it is that you do into an interactive piece of software? So if you're going to try to train somebody else or turn what it is that you do into an interactive piece of software, you would have to ask yourself what you do at every step. What do I do first? What do I do second? What do I do third? Why am I doing that? What am I looking for? What if I get answer A? What if I get answer B? What comes next, right? See, because behind every one of those answers is a reason why you're doing it. See, so if somebody asked you, right, what's the reason why? You could tell them after you've interrogated it. And so by treating your mechanism, your approach, your process, as if you were going to train somebody else to replace you, or even better, if you were going to create an interactive app, you would have to uncover everything. You would have to dig in, and you could not operate or think through intuition alone. Like, right? Like there would have to be, you would have to be able to say, we do this next, we look at this, we ask this, we assess this, we do this, we ask this question, we look at this, and all of those things combined tell us what to do next. And then based on that, there are either one of three paths, either path A, B, or C. Path A, we're going to do this and the reason why. Path B, we're going to do this and the reason why. Path C, we're going to do this and the reason why. See, if you spend the time interrogating, which I'm going to walk you through some simple questions that you can ask, you get to the underlying reasons why your method works, right? Why your method works. What you have to stop doing, especially Ubadullah, is you have to stop saying to yourself that the real power of a mechanism comes from the credibility or status of the person, because that is not the case. Not when you are using a unique mechanism. If you had a mechanism that was a commoditized, ordinary mechanism, then I would say, sure, your status, your credibility may make people want to buy from you versus everybody else. If there is an apples to apples comparison in terms of the mechanism and the way that it works, then sure, your credibility and authority and status, right, is valuable. But when there is an apples to oranges comparison, right, and now, right, here is why this method is different, and here is why this method is better than the common method. And you're going to see in just a little bit how we present that to show your prospects why it's better. So let's start with this. Let's start with this bad boy. And let's talk about, there are two aspects to naming your unique mechanism, right? And like I told you at the very beginning of our time together earlier this morning, this is really very simple for you to grasp. There are two aspects to your unique mechanism. Number one is clarity on how and why it works. Really, what I should say here for you guys and gals is clarity on what is the mechanism. What is your mechanism? What is your system? What is your framework? What is your process? What is your approach? If I asked any of you, if you said to me, I help people grow a greener lawn in a shorter time than anybody else or any other method, right? My first question would be, how do you do that? What do you teach them? What do you do? What do you show? What do you use? How do you implement, right? I help people get Google rankings. How do you do that? SEO. How do you do that? Right? Like what's your search engine optimization process? Like what's your secret? What's your secret sauce? What's your weapon? What's your approach? How do you do it? Because, right, not everybody does search engine optimization the same way. Just like if people said, like I train salespeople. How do you train salespeople? What do you teach them? What's your method? There are lots of different approaches to sale. I teach people how to, close more deals or whatever the terminology, right? I teach people how to close more deals. How do you teach people how to close more deals? What are you teaching them? What are you telling them? What aren't you using? Why aren't you using it? Why are you using this method? What's behind this? Why does like all of these questions that we're going to, right? That's about clarity on the method, clarity on the mechanism. What is it that you're actually doing that is producing the result, right? Because the answer is when we say, going back to the search engine optimization, I help people get top Google rankings, let's just say. Well, how do you help them get top search engine rankings? I help them with search engine optimization. See, that's surface level, because, well, what do you do? Tell me, what do you do? Right? I help people generate more sales. What do you do? I help people become better salespeople. How? What do you teach them? What do you tell them? What do you show them? What exercises do you have them do? What do you have them repeat? How do you help them? What method do you use for helping them deal with objections or whatever it is? How do you help them focus on benefits? How do you help them control the sale? Like, what do you do? This is where, right, as experts, and this is important for you guys and gals to understand, as experts, we oftentimes can take for granted what we know and understand and do. Right? Like some of the stuff that you do is just natural. You've never really spent the time really thinking about it and really unpacking it because you're the one that's doing it. Right. And the reality is that you've got to step into this role of, I'm now going to turn this over to somebody else. I'm going to have to train somebody else on my exact method, process, system, right? Or I'm going to create an interactive app. And now, in order to create that interactive app, I have to be able to program it to ask certain questions, look at certain things, make certain decisions. And so you have to learn to unpack it. That's what I mean when I say clarity on how and why it works. And every one of you, I would say here, number one, if I asked you, why does your thing work? Why does it work? Like if you have 5 steps, why does what is the reason for doing step 1, right? And well, why does it work to produce that result? What's the reason for doing step 2? Why does step 2 work? What's the reason for doing step 3? Well, why does step 3 work? Right? It's this kind of digging. It's this interrogating. So that's the first one, clarity on how and why it works. The second is the name of the mechanism. And the reason why I bolded clarity on how and why it works is because understanding how it works is far more important. I'll tell you, despite what most people think, the name is almost inconsequential. The name is almost insignificant. There's only one rule, which I'm going to teach you in just a second. But the understanding how and why it works is critical. It's critical because it prevents what's called a faux mechanism. And so I want you to listen very carefully to me here. This is something that I'm now seeing more and more of. So I introduced the unique mechanism. So I was exposed to the idea of a mechanism, I don't even know, many moons ago. And then I think I introduced the unique mechanism to the entrepreneurial space maybe 8 years ago, something like that, give or take, right? And it's really become almost, it's talked about now a lot more. I wouldn't certainly say commonplace, but it's talked about a lot more. And one of the big mistakes that a lot of marketers, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of experts are making is they end up with what's called a faux mechanism. Now, a faux mechanism is where they look at what it is that they're doing. They look at their method, their approach, their process, their system. And what they do is they choose a name for it. And they just take a whiz bang name and they slap it on to what it is that they do. And they bypass the interrogation, meaning they never spend the time to interrogate their method. So they take their approach, their process, their whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's 5 steps that they use 5 steps to advertise on Facebook, 5 steps to grow green grass, whatever it is, right? And they slap a fancy pants name on it, something that sounds really cool, really attractive, really interesting. And the reason why this is a faux mechanism is because when it comes time for them to explain what makes their mechanism superior, they don't have the reasons. They don't have the reasoning because they've never spent the time interrogating it. Right. And so what they have is a faux mechanism. What they have is something that they can say, I have a different way for you to get XYZ result. But then when it comes time to prove what makes their method superior, they don't have the reasoning because they did not interrogate their approach. Through the interrogation, you are able to identify the reasons why yours is better, the reasons why you believe yours is better. And that's all you need. The reasons why you believe yours is better, right? And every one of you believes that yours is better than the other approaches, or else you'd be doing it differently. And so a faux mechanism is when you just slap a name on it, when you bypass the interrogation process. You want a real mechanism. A real mechanism is where you introduce something different, and that's something different. You can then give the reasons for why it is superior. And that comes through the interrogation process. You don't want to slap a fancy pants name on just what it is that you do without interrogating it, because when it comes time to prove why yours is superior, it falls apart, right? It'll fall apart. That's what happens to lots of experts and marketers, right? That they're able to say, I've got something different, but they're not able to effectively prove or explain why theirs is superior. That's a faux mechanism. It's different, but they can't prove why it's superior. Remember, you heard me say earlier that different is what gets attention, but what produces the conversion is showing what makes it superior. Different is what gets attention, but proving what makes it superior, presenting what makes it superior, explaining the reason why it is superior is what produces the conversion. So this is why before you interrogate your mechanism, you really should know your competitors. You really want an understanding of like, what are your competitors saying, right? Like, and I don't mean, you don't need to do a full-blown analysis per se of your competitors, but what you really want to do is you really want to kind of understand at least what is the mechanism behind your competitors. Like, how does theirs work? So we start with what is the mechanism behind their offer? Like, right, even if it's unstated, meaning like based on what they're teaching, their method works because, you know, you buy low and sell high, or their method works because you spray and pray with your Facebook ads or whatever. Like, and I'm not saying don't put a negative twist on it here. I'm just saying, what is it? How does their approach work? How does their mechanism or method work, right? So meaning like, how does it work? Like, what is it that they're doing? How does it produce the result? Good, bad, doesn't matter. How does it work? What is positive and negative about their approach? Now, this is positive, negative from the prospect's perspective. So like you might look at a competitor or competitors and say like the common approach is time consuming, it's tedious, it costs money, it takes a while to produce results, it requires a lot of blah, 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 you know, and so you want to look at their mechanism, their approach, kind of how their thing works, even if, again, they're not explicit about having a unique mechanism. And you want to ask yourself these questions, like what's positive, what's good about it? What's a good aspect that the prospects like? When we think about what your prospects want in terms of, or what they're looking for in terms of a good solution, or an exciting solution, what is it that they are looking for? And what's negative? What would your prospects see as negative in terms of their mechanism? And then, right, does theirs solve a symptom or a root cause? Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit more in just a bit. When we get to the marketing. What I mean by this is that, do you believe that, and if you don't have the answer to this, like if you don't know the answer to this, don't worry about it, right? These are some questions to give you an understanding of what it is that your competitors are offering in terms of their mechanism. But so is theirs really addressing the root problem? Like, or is theirs just addressing a symptom of the problem, right? Like, is theirs addressing the real underlying cause of the issue, or is theirs just addressing a symptom? A simple example for me to give with that is let's take paid traffic. And so there are a lot of people that they can't afford paid traffic. And they can't afford paid traffic because you know, they don't make enough money back. And so some people come along and say, what you want is, you want to use cheap traffic. You want to use a cheaper source of traffic. You want to advertise on Snapchat, or you want to advertise on Twitter, or you want to, like blah, blah, blah. You want a cheap traffic, right? That is an example in most cases of just treating the symptom, because the real underlying problem is that the campaign isn't converting enough and or isn't producing a high enough average order value, transaction value. And so the idea of like just going for cheap traffic is treating the symptom of the problem. The real underlying problem is that they've got a campaign that's just not converting well. And you could even say that it's not converting well as a symptom of an underlying issue. They're missing a part of the E5 method or something like that. But the point is that when people they're just treating the symptom, they're not really treating the root cause. And so you want to ask yourself, is are my competitors really just treating the symptom of the real like underlying problem, or are they treating the underlying problem? Like, is what they're talking about dealing with, are they trying to solve the underlying problem, or are they dealing with a symptom? And you'll understand how we use this for your mechanism in just a little bit. And so I want to start by looking at competitors. Now it comes time to interrogate your unique mechanism. And I couldn't find a better graphic than this. So I know that interrogate and the microscope don't really go together, but you get the point. You're putting your mechanism under the microscope. That's probably a better way to say it, but I say interrogate. And so here are just some of the questions. Like, this is kind of the depth, and I really gave you a lot of these already in the questioning when I talked about interrogating your mechanism. But like, what is my approach? Number one, you got to ask yourself, like, what is my approach? What is my approach, right? And after today, I'm going to give you the slides. So you'll have all the slides to go along with your workbook. And so what is my approach, right? What is my approach? How does my approach work? So I don't care whether if your relationship, like you're working with folks with relationships, if you're coaching on finances, if you're helping people find the right annuity or the right insurance thing, if you are a dent, I don't care what it is. What is my approach? What is my approach to solving the problem? How does my approach work? Why does it work? Right? Am I addressing the real root cause? Is that maybe why? And this is just an example, but why does it work? Why does it work? So what is my approach? How does it work? Like what, right? And why does it work? Those are different questions. What is my approach? How does the approach work? That's kind of big picture perspective. And then why does the approach work? Why do I do it the way that I do it? Right? Like, why do you do it the way that you do it? See, that is one of the most valuable questions for you to ask. If you do something in order, like you do it, in this order, why do you do it that way? Like, if you like, and I want you to understand that you will have reasons. You will have a reason why you do it the way that you do it. You just probably have never thought about it. And so why do I do it the way that I do it? Why do I do it in the order in which I do it? Why do we do this step first and then this step second? Why not reverse it? What would happen if we reversed it? What would happen if somebody did it out of order? What would they lose? Right? Like, I could talk about the E5 method. When somebody skips the first E, which is examine, they end up creating campaigns that are off the mark from what it is that their prospects really want, or their competitors have already said to them, right? And so, right, that's why we do that first. That's why that is critical. Why do we, with the E5 method, why do we start with the marketing, the campaign thesis, which we're going to talk a little bit about today? And why do we then go to the offer and then go back to the beginning of the campaign? Why don't we do it the other way around? There's reasons. So why do I do it in the order in which I do it? What have I added or subtracted? Now, this is for those of you that you kind of do something similar to what others do. Like, let's go back to the search engine optimization, or to the LinkedIn marketing. You could even go back to the example of the chiropractor. Well, has the chiropractor added anything to the onboarding of a patient, right? Is there anything that, right, I believe it was Barbara with the SEO, that, right, is there anything that she's added to the common price? Is there anything that others do that she took out because it's just unnecessary? Anything that's been added in, anything that's been subtracted, anything that's been combined? Is there anything that you do in your approach that you've kind of combined? Are you doing an analysis, like a dual analysis, where you're analyzing prospects at the same time that you're analyzing competitors, and you do it that way, right? And you do it combined. Well, why do you do it that way? Right? Why did you combine it? What is the benefit of combining it? Why didn't you choose to do it separate? What is the benefit of that? What's the reason behind that? See, all you got to do is just spend time digging into why it is that you do what it is that you do. That's going to tell you, right? That's going to give you that's going to give you the evidence that you're then going to use in your marketing campaign. If you do, like, if I asked you, which I'm not going to ask you, but if I asked you, right, like, let's say those of you in the States, who did you vote for? Which I'm not going to ask you. But if I were to ask you that, right, hopefully the overwhelming majority of you, if not every one of you, would be able to, you'd give me an answer. And if I said why, you would be able to give reasons, whether it's one, whether it's two, whether it's three, whether it's five, right? A lot of people they might kind of know it intuitively or in their gut. They've never sat back and they've never analyzed it. But right, when you decide to do something, there is a reason why. And so if I asked you why, right, hopefully you'd be able to share. You'd be able to give me at least one answer why. That's what we're doing here. We're unearthing the reasons why, because it's the reasons why that you unearth here that you're going to use to prove what makes you superior. So one of the questions, one of the more common questions that came in earlier is, well, how do I prove that mine is superior? Well, number one, right, if you believe that yours is superior, right, or else you would be doing it differently. I have to believe that for every one of you. You believe that yours is superior is the better way or the best way to do it, or you'd be doing it differently. Therefore, let's talk about the reasons why you believe that it is better, why you believe that it's quicker, why you believe that it's easier. Let's drill in. These are the questions to uncover that. Well, once you uncover that, well, why do you believe that it's faster? Because we only do 3 steps instead of the 5 steps. And why are those 3 steps able to get the same result compared to 5? Because of you're able to give the answers. Those answers we're then going to take and we're going to use in your marketing to show your prospects why it's better, why it's faster. See, the reasons are already there. You just have to unpack it. The evidence is already there. You just have to unpack it. And so this is not about like, I got to pull a rabbit out of a hat and come up with, some whiz bang explanation. No, you're going to see how we put this all together. Why is my way easier? These are some questions to kind of go a little bit deeper. Right now, your way may not be easier, but this is a question that we're going to ask, right? And if the answer is it's not, then don't worry about it. Like, let me give you an example. Let's take the E5 method. I never claim that the E5 method is the easiest way to have a marketing campaign. I'll talk about it's the best way, and I'll tell you why. It produces the most consistent results, and I'll tell you why. It's able to grow monster businesses, and I'll tell you why. But I never talk about it being the easiest. Why? Because it's not. There are a lot of other fast ways of putting up a campaign. They might not work nearly as well. They might not produce nearly the consistent flow of clients, right? But they're easier to put up. I never talk about the E5 method being easier. I talk about it being better, more consistent, more powerful, more reliable, right? In terms of acquisition and cash flow and all that. And so you may ask yourself, why is my way easier? And your answer may be it's not, and then move on. That's okay. This is us interrogating. This is us trying to learn about your methodology, right? Why does my way work faster to produce results? Again, it may not. It might not produce faster results, but it might produce more results. It might produce more consistent results. It might produce more reliable results. It might produce more safer results. But the point is you want to ask this. Now, look, I will tell you, and for what it's worth, and just write it down, right? That going forward, when you are thinking about product creation, when you're thinking about, service creation, offer creation, ideally, when you're starting from scratch, right now, what we're talking about is an existing process, an existing methodology that you have, that you do, that you use. And we're talking about interrogating that, right? And understanding it. But sometimes going forward, you're going to use this process to put together mechanisms, to put together a unique mechanism. And you're going to be able to start from scratch without having an existing mechanism. You're going to be able to develop one. When you do that, right, going forward, this is just a side note to highlight, write down, circle, that you want to focus on easier, faster. If you can develop a mechanism that produces results easier than the others and faster, that is extremely attractive in the overwhelming majority of markets. So what you have right now is what you have right now. When you are starting from an existing method, an existing process, framework, system, approach, steps, whatever, it is what it is. We're interrogating to uncover how it works and why it works and what it does. But going forward, when you create mechanisms, right, which is the way that the savviest entrepreneurs and marketers in the direct response space do it, you want to look for, how can I put something together that will bring faster results and easier results? Maybe not better results, maybe not more consistent, but faster and easier. 2 extremely attractive characteristics for lots of markets. But again, clear with the E5 method, not the easiest. Same thing with, like, look, the ask method is certainly not the easiest way to publish or put out a survey, or doesn't have to be, right? But it produces better results. Might not be the easiest way. It might not be the fastest way, but it produces better results for list segmentation and all that. Why does my way produce greater results? So does yours produce greater results, and why? Why is it able to produce better results, more results, a greater volume of results? If it's weight loss, if it's grass, if it's leads, whatever it is, traffic, if it's returns, whatever it is, why is your way able to produce greater results? If the answer is it doesn't produce greater results, but it produces faster results, then okay, then you skip that. But we're trying to unpack, why does my way produce more consistent results? Does it produce more consistent results? If the answer is no, then that's okay, leave it. If the answer is yes, you have to answer the question why. Why? That is a question that whole why is one of the questions. It's like, these are go-to defaults that, like, when I'm with clients, when I work with clients on fleshing out their marketing and dialing in their marketing, I always ask why. Like when you say it's just better. Why is it better? See, I want to just take a right turn, for 1 second. And so let me do this here and say this, that, there's this weird kind of mentality that a lot of experts, entrepreneurs, marketers have as it relates to marketing. And it's this mentality that if I say it, they'll believe it. That if I say that this is better, that they'll believe that it's better, right? Or if I say that this is that this works to produce XYZ result, they'll believe that it produces, right? Just because I published it, they'll believe it. That is the farthest thing from the case. The healthiest kind of perspective for you to have is that your prospects are going to doubt the claims that you make unless you have support or evidence. And for us at the heart, right, when we say we've got a different and a better way, right? If that's all we said, we've got a different and better way, and you want it because it's going to strip off weight and it's going to do this 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 for you, and you're going to love it, and life is going to be great and blah, blah, blah. And you can get it for $49 or whatever. And that's all we did. We just made an endless string of claims. We claim that we've got something different and better, and we claim that it'll do all this for you. And now it's $49 and you can get it, right? That is the mentality of, I'm just expecting people to believe me because I said it. Just because I said it, they're going to believe that it's true. They're not going to believe you. What they're going to want to know is why. Tell me why. How is it able to produce the results? Why is it able to produce better results? Like, if you don't give support today, the majority of prospects in the majority of markets are jaded. They're skeptical. Why? Because they've been inundated with claims. They've been inundated with promises. They've heard it. They've seen it. That's why, as I said earlier today, the unique mechanism gives hope because, right, you've got something different. It grabs attention. Right? And then, as you're going to learn in a little bit, we're going to prove it. We're not just going to claim it. We're going to claim it and prove it. How are we going to prove it? We're going to use your reasons from your interrogation to prove why it is better in the area that we choose to show that it is better. And so, okay. So with that, now let's talk about naming your unique mechanism. So there's only one rule, right? The name, I'm going to tell you this, and I do not want you to, this is the probably the number one hang up or the number one friction point for experts, entrepreneurs, marketers, when they first learn about the unique mechanism when they go through E5 coaching, and that is this. They get caught up in the name and they think that the power is in the name. The power is not in the name. The power is in understanding how it works so that we can explain why it's able to produce superior results, either faster, easier, more consistent, blah, blah, blah. The name is almost irrelevant. It really is almost insignificant. It's not about having a name. It's about being able to show why that thing that you've named is able to deliver the results in a way that is superior, right? So every name that we kind of today is commonplace to us. Even if we went back to, Six Sigma, let's say Six Sigma, right? And people say, well, it's Six Sigma. It's, like that's a name. What does that even mean? Like what? And I get there's meaning behind it, blah, 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 but it's not about, nobody looks at it and says, right, this is credible because it's called Six Sigma, right? That was a name that somebody gave it. It's the explanation of the way that it works. It's the explanation of the method. It's the reason why it's able to produce the result. It's not about the name. The name is rather insignificant. There is only one rule. And it's this: you want to avoid names which sound promotional or are benefit driven. Instead, you want a name, and listen to me, you want a name which sounds credible, which sounds scientific, which sounds formal, something like which you'd see appear on a news program or at a conference or in another experts or speakers presentation. You don't want something that sounds promotional. You don't want something that sounds benefit driven. Save the benefit driven promotional sounding name for the product. Right? Save the benefit, driven promotional sounding name for your product. When it comes to the unique mechanism, you want it to sound credible. You want it to sound like something that is legit, right? You want it to sound like something that is legit, especially in the coaching, consulting, information marketing, business development space. You want it to sound like something that you could potentially read about in a future college textbook, or that you can see somebody talk about or allude to or reference in a TED talk, right? You want something that you can see somebody writing a blog post, about, like a research-based blog post, not a promotional post. And so here are like just some random examples of names that or approaches that you would want to avoid, right? So the income explosion system, right? Like that's, forget whether I like the explosion, or not, neither here nor there. But if I was going to use that for anything, it would be a product name. That's not a name for a unique mechanism, right? Because that is immediately going to be viewed by prospects as this is obviously something this person is selling. They're not reporting to me on a discovery of a new method. They're selling me on some system, because nowhere in a college textbook on investing or on, marketing would there be the income explosion system, right? We're not going to hear Seth Godin talk about, you want to rely on the income explosion system. No. And so the big tomato growth system, right? If you were selling something on how to grow big tomatoes, right? Like big tomato growth system. No, that's benefit driven. That's outcome driven. That's a name that you would give to a product. The back pain relief protocol, right? That's just a terrible name, right? It's a terrible name. It's commoditized. There's nothing different about it. And so, if somebody can go ahead and share for Barbara a link to the workbook, that would be awesome. Help heal happy method, right? Like that's, again, these are great. These are names. I don't even want to say great names for products, but these are names that are much more appropriate for products. And I'm going to give you examples of what you want in just a second. Help heal happy method, the muscle growth activator, superior stock profits blueprint, right? You can see how even in the last one, for example, the superior stock profits blueprint, how it is clear that you are trying to convey a benefit. It is clear that you're talking about something that you want the prospect to see as good, to see as attractive, right? Like it's clear of the intention behind the name, right? And so that's the kind of thing that we would go for a product. Here are examples of what you want. And this is absolutely going to be, yeah, Ryan, absolutely. Academic naming versus flashy. You're going to think this is crazy when you see these names that are much more appropriate. But please trust me, right? Trust me. And so these are the kind of names that you want. Cash flow compounding. And I don't know if some of these names are already used or not used, right? But we could talk about, like, in order to, like, getting out of debt, what you want to use to get out of debt is a method called cash flow compounding. It's very different from simply saving or skimping or doing any of that kind of common stuff. Cash flow compounding works to get you out of debt because of how it leverages right? And see how cash flow compounding is something that you could see talked about. You could see being talked about in a text or something like that. Let me see here. Was I not showing the slides all this time? That would be terrible. No, I wasn't. So sorry about that. So here, let's do this. So these were the no's. See how number one, and also you can kind of go back and only my beard. So you guys learned very little. You got very little value if you were only seeing my my beard. Also, rule number 2 is never differentiate or never try to differentiate with facial hair, because now I can never shave this beard ever again. And no, I'm kidding. So these are ones that you don't want. And here, right? Cash flow compounding. So if we go back to this, whoops, income explosion system, right? Versus cash flow compounding. Cash flow compounding, right? And I know that there are some subtleties to this, right? But it doesn't, it is, it's got a more credible feel here, like soil regeneration versus the big tomato growth system. Like, right, there's a different way for you to grow big tomatoes. It's called soil regeneration. And when done properly, right, it is the most effective way to grow big tomatoes. The reason why it works is because it replenishes nutrients in the soil without you needing to, right? I'm just making this up as I go, obviously, but the point is that, right, soil regeneration doesn't sound like we named it something to make it sound great. We're naming the method. We're naming the mechanism. We're naming the system. Lumbar reactivation instead of the back pain, relief protocol. Lumbar reactivation, right? That there's a different way for you to relieve low back pain rather than taking over-the-counter pain medications or going to a chiropractor or using home inversion tables. It's something that you can do at home in the comfort of your home. It's called lumbar reactivation. And the reason why it works is because it lengthens your tight, blah, 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 your tight hip flexors and strengthens your glute muscles. And the reason why that is effective at relieving pain is because see how I could then go in and I could educate, right? I could take somebody that is dealing with low back pain and I could say, right, like if you're suffering with low back pain and you've tried different methods, you tried a variety of methods. There is a new and very unique method for alleviating your low back pain naturally without pain medication. It's very different from the common approach. This method is what's called lumbar reactivation. And it works by boom. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to explain, right? And if I was teaching or sharing or using lumbar reactivation, right? We've got a couple clients in the like low back pain arena, right? Well, I'm going to explain why my method works. I'm going to explain that like if this method was based on, lengthening the hip flexor muscles, which get tight from sitting and they strengthen the glutes, right? Therefore shifting the hips back in place, the lumbar spine becomes aligned, right? I can walk through that and I can explain to somebody that what most people don't realize is that their low back pain is caused by this, which comes from this, lumbar reactivation shifts your lumbar back into by doing this, boom. And then somebody says, I get it. I realize now I understand why I'm having low back pain, right? And somebody that first comes across the campaign and they hear us talk about, we've got a different way for you to relieve your low back pain. And it works better than anything else. It's called lumbar reactivation. Now I've got a little bit of hope just to start with, because maybe this is the answer. Maybe I can stop suffering with low back pain. This is something that I haven't heard before, something that I haven't tried before. This is very different than, right? And if the person said, I'm a chiropractor, right? And I've discovered this treating, over the last 8 years or whatnot, that's enough for me to listen to this doctor, right? I don't need to have this be the number one low back pain specialist in the world, right? Because they've got a different method. If I was looking for a chiropractor and I was comparing chiropractor to chiropractor to chiropractor, then I'm going to look for the one with the best credentials or the best track record or the best, the most amount of, experience. Type 2 fiber propensity, right? So this is, and all of these are made up. Like these are just, right? Type 2 fiber propensity. This was the muscle building, the muscle growth activator or whatnot, right? Muscle growth activator, right? This is, right? If you want to build bigger, thicker biceps or whatnot, right? There's a different way to do that. So if you've been working out a long time, if you're unhappy with the size of it's called, right, type 2 fiber propensity. And right, the reason why it works is because it activates the muscle fiber that grows, that undergoes hypertrophy more than the fiber that doesn't. And it does that by, and then we would go through that, right? Type 2 fiber propensity, equity reallocation. These are all, right? I would say the same thing over and over. These are names that I made up that just have, more of that credible sounding. They don't sound commercial. They don't sound hype. You could see somebody talking about, equity reallocation. You could see somebody talking about, the in the financial space, overbought, oversold, overlap. You could see somebody talking about lumber reactivation. It's not hokey. It's not commercial. It's not benefit driven. It's not flashy. It's not supposed to be. That's the name of your product, your service, your bundle, your offer, but not your mechanism. The mechanism it should be credible, should feel scientific, should feel more academic. And so hopefully that makes sense. Here are some words, phrases that you can use, like when you're talking about your mechanism, and you don't have to use these, but you could see formula, pattern, signal, routine, technology, algorithm, device, strategy, trigger, method, process, protocol, structure, technique, framework, system, right? Like, but if you look at these, like, so you could take any one of these and button it on to the end. But if you look at these, you'll notice that there is no method. There is no, system. There is none of that. I like these names much better. It's not to say that, E5 method, ask method, belt method, product launch formula, that there's anything wrong with those. I like these better, but the others work as well. So you don't need a name like, you don't have to have system or formula or right. We didn't have with Conversion Fly, we had lossless tracking. We didn't have the lossless tracking system, the lossless tracking protocol, the lossless tracking method. We just had lossless tracking. And so you don't have to have those. Again, right? The name is far less significant. The thing that I really want you to grasp, and this is important as it relates to the name, is the name should flow from the interrogation. Meaning, don't try to name it first, interrogate it first, because from your interrogation, you'll identify the seeds of what you can use to name it, right? So like, look, going back to this bad boy over here, let's say lumbar reactivation. Well, if I was interrogating that method of alleviating low back pain, and I saw that it helps to stretch the hip flexors. It helps to strengthen the glutes. Therefore, it helps to realign the lumbar, the low back. Therefore, right, it kind of reactivates the muscles in the low back. It's from that I would come up with lumbar reactivation, right? I might come with lumbar realignment. I don't like lumbar realignment because it sounds a little bit like commoditized. Like it sounds like, I kind of know what he's talking about. But right, it's from that where the name comes, right? So it comes from the interrogation of the method that you find the seeds of what you can use for a name. You don't just name it, you interrogate it, and then like, look, how does it work? Does it work? Is there psychology in it? Is there, right, with the soil? Like maybe this method, part of what it includes is, is we turn the soil over and over. And as we're turning the soil over and over, where it's getting infused with, with nutrients. Maybe we call it soil infusion, soil reinfusion, soil regeneration, any one of those. Like people always say, well, what's better? Soil infusion, soil reinfusion, soil regeneration? Don't matter. It doesn't matter. But what you do want is you want the name to flow from the interrogation. You don't want to name it out of context of the interrogation, because it's just not going to make sense then. Like, in other words, when we get to the campaign argument and we explain how it works and why it produces better results or superior results, right? There's going to be like a disconnect. And it's not a deal killer, but you want it to, okay, now it makes sense why it's called lumbar reactivation. It makes sense why it's called cash flow compounding. It makes sense why it's called type 2 fiber propensity, right? Or it makes sense why it's called equity reallocation, right? And so these should come from the interrogation, not the other way around. You don't do the interrogation and name it, or name it and then do the interrogation. Do the interrogation first, and then name it. So interrogation, and okay. So let me see here. So let's just see. So just make sure we'll get the replay. Yes, Julian, you will get the replay tomorrow. Absolutely. So Mark said the body fit X method. So no, so like the body fit X method, I would see more as the product name, almost like P90X, right? It's very similar to P90X, body fit X, body fit X, but it is, what is it about the body fit X method that makes it work? Is it like, is it muscle overload that's why it works? Like, why does the body fit X method work? That's what I would identify, and that's what I would name. So like you could say to somebody like, like like when it comes to like, look, body fit X, it works because of blah, 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 unique mechanism. That's what you're looking for. And so, thoughts on, so Phil said the thoughts, hearts and numbers method, because we help course creators get more profits and client success by knowing their metrics. We've started using this recently, but it doesn't feel like it's resonating. No, I wouldn't go hearts and numbers, right? Because it doesn't, again, I want you to think, it reminds me a little bit of happy, help, heal, happy method. What I would do is I would dig into, so if you help them make more money and get more clients by knowing their metrics, right? There is something in the metrics. There is either, right, like maybe it is metric targeting, maybe it is, there's something in the numbers area that I would go with, like metrics targeting, or, the metrics algorithm or something like that, right? It's in that, it's how you teach them to use the numbers where there is the power. And so that's where I would go. Let's get this interrogation. It should be, so, got it. Object trading. Okay. So let me go back to Sheldon. So what are the techniques that you would use to interrogate? So we really walk through that, right? So it's just questioning. There is no whiz bang technique. It is, think about, another way to view this is think about if you were a consultant and you were brought in to help somebody improve their process, right? If you were brought in as a consultant to help somebody improve their process, improve their framework, improve their method, right? Well, before you can improve their method, you would have to do a diagnosis. You would have to understand what is their method, right? You would have to understand what they're doing, what they're not doing. Why are they doing it? Why are they not doing it? It's the interrogation. There is no technique or outside of just asking yourself questions like the questions that I gave of why you do what you do. Why do you do it the way that you do it? Why do you do it in the order in which you do it? Why do you do this step? Why do you do that step? Why do you wait? Why don't you do X? Like, why did you subtract something if you did? Why did you add something if you did? It's just a matter of uncovering your reasons why you're doing what you're doing. I cannot stress that enough for everybody. There is no secret sauce to the interrogation, like unless you are, and this is the truth, right? And I want you to get this. This is part of what it is that we do, like is we always have the real conversations. We always say what needs to be said. We don't sugarcoat anything with our clients. And that is, unless you've just willy-nilly decided to do something and you don't even know why you're doing it, you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. You have reasons why you're doing it, right? If you have no reasons why you're doing it, you're just doing it for the heck of doing it, then I would tell you, well, we need to rethink your method and we need to come up with a different method. But if you're doing it and you've got reasons, then what are those reasons? That's all we want to uncover. What are those reasons? Because we're going to use those reasons to demonstrate why it's superior, because those reasons are your belief in why it's superior, right? So somebody asked me, why do you use why do you have folks create a big marketing idea, right? I'll give you the reasons why it grabs attention, the reasons why it stands out, the reasons why it is compliant, and the reasons why it works, that it speaks to the head, it speaks to the heart, right? That people pay attention to different. If you ask me, why do we teach people how to present a sin offer? I could give you the reasons. Why not just a plain old offer? I'll give you the reasons why. Just like I have to believe that for each and every one of you, once you spend the time asking yourself those questions and peeling back, you too will be able to give those reasons. The beauty is that those reasons that you give are the same reasons that you're going to give in your marketing. right? It's not about slick whiz bang copy. And you're going to see this. We're going to get into this. It's not about slick whiz bang copy. It's about, right, I've got something different. This different thing is superior. And here's why. That's it. Remember when I said earlier, it's simple, right? Might not be easy, but it's simple, right? I got something different. This different thing is better at giving you the result that you want. And here's why it's better at giving you the result that you want. And so let me see here. So yeah, so let me go back and answer Mike's question, and then we're going to keep going. I think, if I'm not mistaken, let me do this, just get to this part. Yep. Okay. And so, and then after this, we're going to talk about deploying your unique mechanism in your marketing. And then I'm going to take whatever you guys want to talk to me about, whatever questions it is that you have, anybody that wants to jump on the mic and run something by me. We're going to do that. So Mike's question was, any suggestions for coming up with a metaphorical mechanism for an option trading service? So what I would say in general with the metaphorical mechanism is number one, I would go, and this is a recommendation that I would give you guys, regardless of whether we were on this workshop or one of our other workshops or inside coaching. And that is, there's a book, I believe the name was changed, but you could find it by searching for Metaphorical Selling. Metaphorically Selling by Ann Miller. It's a great book to get started, just understanding metaphor. Metaphor, by the way, as a side note, something that I talk about inside of our E5 coaching curriculum. Metaphor is when I did a promotion for Robert Cialdini's newest book, or what was his newest book, Persuasion. On the phone, right, we talked about how the metaphor is one of the most valuable persuasion triggers there is. Metaphor is when you connect something that is, right, unknown or difficult to understand to something immediately understandable, right? It's when you take something that is kind of confusing, complicated, deep, and you connect it to something that is immediately understandable, graspable, that's a word, by the prospect. Well, really, at the core of developing metaphors, and the book Metaphorically Selling will help you with this, but it's kind of straightforward, is that good metaphors are ways of attaching what it is that you want to talk about with something that is much easier to grasp, something that the prospect knows. And so to answer the question for Mike, yeah, the tall lady with the iceberg, that's right, new name, correct, is what is this like? What is this like? What is this similar to, right? What can I compare this to? Right? Like, what is this, like, it's one of those where, it's one of those where, like, what is trading options like? Could you say that it's, it's like, and this isn't the best example, but because we come up with a cooler metaphor, but it's like, making money off stocks without owning them, making money off companies without owning shares. Is it right? Like that, and that, what is that like? That's like, that's like renting stocks. This is your stock rental, your dividend rental. Like, what is it like? That's the simplest way to get started thinking about the metaphorical mechanism, really thinking about metaphors in general for your marketing is, what is this like? What is this similar to? What can this be compared to, right? Like, and that's why you see, and this was mentioned earlier, Airbnb for dogs could be, Peter, it'd be, portfolio insurance. And again, this is all, it has to come from the marketplace, what they've seen, what they've heard, in the financial investing space, there's a lot of savvy, right? Like, my client Agora, beast. But, what is this like? What is this like? What is this similar to? What can this be compared to? And you see it all the time. Canadian Social Security, this like, this is like collecting a check from, Social Security, no matter your age, without it impacting your future. There's so many, this is similar to, right? That's where you begin. There are a lot of other ways to come up with metaphors, but that's the simplest kind of basic way to start. And in significantly more sophisticated markets, and markets that are really have been exposed to really good marketing, and they've been exposed to lots of unique mechanisms, you really need to think. Like, this isn't one of those things where, for the metaphorical mechanism, right? This isn't one of those things where I would come up with two ideas and pick one and then roll with it. Like, for the metaphorical, naming the metaphorical mechanism or coming up with the metaphorical mechanism, I mentioned earlier, it's nowhere near as common, and it's also more difficult because it requires a lot more thinking about the actual metaphor, what you're comparing it to, than does the other core three types of mechanisms. And so we're going to come to that in the next section, Mark. And so